The title suggests many things. The important issue is the world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental, and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Just gone 7:20. It's a Monday. A lovely Monday to have because it's a public holiday tomorrow being the 16th of June. Yes, auspicious day in South Africa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another Business Matters program. Business Matters brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. The Minara Chamber of Commerce has also asked me to shout out to everybody to send in their nominations for Business Personalities of the Year, whether it's in the categories or various categories that they have. The business awards this year I think is scheduled for around about the 23rd of October, so it's time to send in your nominations for the business awards for this year. And you can get onto their website, and on their website you will be able to find all the necessary forms that you need to download to fill in those nominations. So get cracking on that. It's www.minara.org.za, www.minara.org.za. Tonight I have somebody in the studio with me. It's not a lonely place to be. A person that has been on the show with me before. His name is Muhammad ARMAAN Mirza, and he's an admitted attorney of the High Court of South Africa. Muhammad ARMAAN, assalamu alaikum, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam, Anwar. Jazakallah for having me. It's good to be back.
Yes, Muhammad ARMAAN is all formally dressed. He says to me he's come to the studio straight from work, so there was no holiday for him today. Some people call it a long weekend by taking the day off, but he was hard at work. So yeah, thanks for spending your time with us.
No problem.
Tonight we're speaking of something that is really, really current. I've just driven on my way here past the Sherwood Hall. The numbers are growing rapidly. The number of people there, I think now would be in the region of, some estimates put it at even up to 10,000. It's a sight to behold. You think you're at a mini Istima now when you drive past there. But yeah, it's sad to see that this is what is happening in our country. But we're going to be talking tonight about the new foreign labor regulations, what employers need to know. Lots and lots of speculation. So let's cut out the speculation. Let's talk about the facts. Lots of emails going around about new laws coming in by the 30th. People talking of fines of up to 100,000 rands, if not more, for second and third time offenders. So we're all in a bit of a quandary, especially employers, because let's face it, many businesses in South Africa are employing foreigners. They literally are driving our economy to a large extent. And now that they've been asked to leave, one would think, what happens to our economy as well? Because a lot of that spending power would be taken out of our economy. So you're the expert. Just to begin, just set a oversight on the recent changes to South Africa's foreign labor regulations and the objectives behind these amendments, taking into consideration what's happening at the moment.
Okay. No problem. Jazakallah for that. I think you hit the nail on the head there. From your introduction, there's so much to unpack. I mean, I live close to that Sherwood ground, so I've seen the numbers growing week on week, 2,000, 4,000. Now for the first time hearing someone say 10,000. So every week it's going up. But at the beginning and at the outset, I think I should make very clear that the changes, the new bill or the proposed policies and reforms are in no way suggesting that South African businesses or employers cannot employ foreign nationals. So as a starting point, as a concern that people might have, if you do have foreign nationals working for you, it's perfectly okay. It's perfectly fine. So there's no rush or frantic or panic to get rid of these employees in your business, because that disrupts operations in your business as a fundamental. So, but to more specifically about your question, I think
there's a but to what you're going to say.
Yeah, there's definitely a but to it. It's, how do I put this? This is not necessarily a change or a deviation from what we currently have in place at the moment. I think the panic and the fear and the speculation, like the emails flying around, largely comes about this 30th of June deadline. I think you must have heard that people need to be out, or any foreigners need to be out by the 30th of June. That isn't something that, as I recall or researched, find to be from government in any way, shape or form. That's really something that's really just a sentiment on the ground, so to speak. So the panic and the urgency is really just because of this 30th of June deadline, which is really just by other groups and movements pushing for the foreign nationals to sort of leave the country. Now it's sort of driven by two documents. One would be the National Labour Migration Policy, as well as the Employment Services Amendment Bill. Now, again, it's truly in keeping with South African legislation. We had policies, legislation in place to ensure that the employment of foreign nationals is in accordance with certain provisions in different legislation. Immigration Act, the Refugees Act, the Labour Relations Act, and different pieces of legislation. To me and my understanding, this is really just a continuation of that. Except we're moving away strictly from compliance to now almost prioritizing the employment of local South Africans over and above foreign nationals in the country. So that's the two sort of changes in policy or legislation that's going to soon come about, perhaps. And the objective behind that is really just to focus on getting South Africans, local South Africans in the community, in and around businesses, employed, working, and contributing to the economy. Because as we all know, unemployment is ever increasing in South Africa, and the idea behind these two pieces of documents and the policy and the bill itself is to really just promote the employment of local South Africans.
Okay, you set a nice groundwork there. So the first thing that we need to get out of our mind is there is no kind of date that is cast in stone, as in the 30th of June. It's these marches that have been planned, March to March, things like that, and they touting a date of the 30th of June. But from what I've read and from what you've just confirmed, the bill or the new bill is still before Parliament. It still has to be ratified. It may be changes to the bill, which means a come back, go back. So 30th of June is not the be all and the end all of it all.
Absolutely not. No, it's exactly like you said. It's the date on the ground where sort of everything comes to a head. It's the D-Day, so to speak. But no, there's no hard and fast rule given by government, Parliament, or any statutory body to say that all foreign nationals or illegal foreign nationals need to be out the country by 30th of June. So,
okay, so we have this. You just said we have this thing about foreign nationals and then illegal foreign nationals. Yeah. Now we all know our borders have been very porous. People have been pouring in from which way, whether through the Kruger National Park or bribing officials at the border post, or however and whichever way. But millions of foreigners have poured into this country, and now all of a sudden there's this thing about no, they need to be out of here. So the government has kind of, in a lot of times, turned a blind eye. They can't say they were not aware of it. I mean, it's glaring. And they've allowed these people to enter this country. They've come here, many of them seeking a job, seeking an honest living, because there were no opportunities in their own countries. And South Africa was kind of perceived as the land of milk and honey. And so, whether by word of mouth or otherwise, here they are, they arrived. Some of them have been here. I'm speaking to a gentleman that came to do some deliveries at our office the other day. He's been working for a particular company for 23 years. And now he says, hey, I have to go back because I've applied for my South African citizenship, and I've applied on 3 occasions and I've been turned down all 3 times. So now you have people that they don't know a life in their own country. They all they know is what they have here, and now they're going to be forced to go back. So, and I think policing has also increased. Suddenly there's now a so-called witch hunt for these people that are foreigners, and up to now nobody even bothered. I mean, really. So where are we in terms of your thinking, or the official position, and if there are foreigners or illegal foreign nationals that are employed, what is the right thing to do, and how do you go about it?
I mean, your question is, it's a great question, because we see it in business all the time. I see it in I'm probably less with my clients, but with people that I know, friends and family and things like that. Their major concern is often employing people who aren't lawfully in the country, and that's probably the main concern there.
That's right.
So, but that's the thing, Anwar. These new reforms don't bring about those concerns. Those concerns should have been there from the very beginning. It's always been an offence to employ someone who's illegally in the country, and the Immigration Act sets out very clearly. It's a criminal offence to employ someone who is not permitted to be in the country. So that always existed. The difference now is perhaps that, and to your point that you alluded to, you speak about a witch hunt, but more than a witch hunt, because that has elements of vigilantism and things like that. It's that there's more work being done by government, and what I mean by that is that there's more. The Department of Employment and Labour have actually employed inspectors and officials to now go out to businesses. So I'm sure you've spoken to friends, family, people who own businesses. I mean, I got a call today from my cousin. He's got a small little operation in northern KZN, and he says to me, someone from the Department of Labour, two of them rocked up, and they told me, look, we want to do an audit of your business. He's like, I don't know what an audit is. And quite simply, these officials are now going to be going to businesses more frequently, because there's more officials and more resources go around, to check your staff complement now. Who is employed in your staff? How long have they been there? Are they lawfully in the country? Do you have employment contracts? Do you issue them with pay slips? The big thing is, it's no longer whether or not this person is lawfully in the country as well, and probably this is the change I should have delineated earlier. It's whether or not this person is entitled to do the work that they're doing in the country as well. Somebody could be on a study visa, for example. Doesn't entitle them to have a full-time job. So that's probably the small nuances that come into play now. So it's always been the case, to answer your question more succinctly. If someone is not permitted to be in the country and you employ them, it's a criminal offence and you can be prosecuted. Not even considering the reputational and commercial harm that your business might suffer because of that. My advice is the same, will always be the same. Check whether or not the employees that you employ are lawfully in the country, and second to that now, whether or not they're entitled to do the work that you're employing them to do.
Okay, so I'm in a clothing industry, and I know a lot of CMT operators that are hiring a lot of foreigners. And the reason is because they work diligently, they're quite easy to upskill, they learn quickly, and they also are prepared to work the long hours. So suddenly, if you take all of these, if they are unofficial or not properly registered in that they don't have a work permit or whatever, take them out of the equation, you're suddenly left with a void, and that's going to affect everybody. Yeah. The products, you can't upskill people and put them into specialist positions overnight. Further than that, you spend money and time and effort in upskilling the people that you do have, and suddenly to lose all of that benefit it's hard to replace.
Yeah.
So is there a way where so-called illegal people that are working at the moment can be made official, or can be made as official as possible
in the country?
Legally in this country.
I mean, it's the idea of the proposed changes, or the new the policy, or the proposed bill itself, is not to prevent people or foreign nationals from accessing or entering the country. It's really just to regulate their presence in the country itself. And so if someone finds themselves in a position where their visa is expiring or their permit expiring or that sort of nature, then the right thing to do is go and renew it. I think it's a different case if they've let that expire. That might, I stand to be corrected, because now this falls under a bit of the immigration side of things, which I'm not particularly au fait with. But they might have to actually leave the country and then come back into the country. Your point about businesses now having spent years upskilling these employees, training them, having them become integral in your business. The difficulty is that if you do get a visit from a department official and this person don't have the documents in order, they could be arrested, you could be hit with a fine, you could be arrested. So these are challenges that businesses will need to grapple with. But it's not something they should sit on, because they will be found out, they will be clamped on, and they will suffer the consequences.
Okay, so let's move on a bit and talk about these proposed changes that are coming. We don't know exactly when they're going to be coming, but we know that these changes are coming. So what are the most significant changes that employees should be aware of when hiring or retaining foreign nationals? So,
the changes, again, I don't want to sound too boring, but they're very much on a compliance side of you. And so, first and foremost, like I said earlier, the idea is that you first need to make sure that the individual that you're employing is lawfully in the country. That as a starting point, you have to work from there. Second to that is that, are they permitted to do the work that you're employing them to do? Now, if we go into the changes, and this now becomes a bit more technical, there's something called the sectoral quota. So you would obviously be familiar with this. You work in the textile industry, and the textile industry, there's different sectors. And so government have proposed that in each sector, at least, there's a quota of the foreign nationals, the percentage of the foreign nationals that can make up the number of employees in that particular quota. Now, the percentages and figures aren't out yet, but that's sort of the direction or the sentiment that we have at the moment, that sector can't be made up of too many foreign nationals working in that particular sector. Now, that's obviously to ensure that, exactly the point that you made now, we don't have the situation in the future where a certain sector or certain industry is hit so badly that there's a break in the supply chain, operations suffer and stuff like that. Again, if I can just go on to compliance, because that's a big one now, you'd have to have your ducks in a row. That means your employment contracts, policies, training. You've got to have the documentation, passports, visas, IDs and the like. You sort of probably need to have a document file for each employee to make sure that if someone does come to visit you, you can pull out your record and show that this person is gainfully employed, they're lawfully in the country, and they serve a purpose in your business, or legitimate purpose in your business. Another big one that I think it will be passed, I think it will be part of the new piece of legislation, is that when businesses are looking to take on new employees, which is something they would have to do on a regular basis, the idea is to do this in a phased manner. That's why I said it's not a case of any employee being forced out the country or forced out of their business. It's more that when employers look to take on new employees in particular, they don't look at employing a foreign national immediately. The idea is to actually look in the local community, in the area, and employ local South Africans into these new positions. Now, if you can't do that, and you don't do that, you probably have to demonstrate why you didn't do that. Now, that's another bit of onus. So one of the themes we can see is that every decision you make needs to be justified. So that's a big change. If you have a gap in your business, if you have someone that you need, a role that you need to fill, the first port of call is to really try and appoint or employ a South African or a local South African into that position. And then if you have a foreign national in your business, and I don't want to go too much into the details, but like you said, someone who's in your business, they know your business, they might be getting a bit older. The idea is to probably get someone a bit younger, a local South African, and really transfer skills from that individual to the younger person, or perhaps someone new, and really transfer the skills from that person to the other, and sort of grow your business that way, as opposed to just employing someone, a foreign national, for example, into that same position.
So what are some of the most common compliant mistakes employees are making when hiring foreign workers, and how can we avoid these mistakes?
So, I mean, I probably deal with this at least once a week. Compliance, it's difficult because it goes to the heart of what businesses or business people don't like to do, which is admin. You're a businessman, you like to run your business, you like to go to work, you like to deal with your clients, you enjoy being on your feet and out on the go. When it comes down to the compliance element of your business, there's lots of requirements that you need to meet. One is you need to meet, at the moment, there's the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. It's requirements that you have to meet as a business. The National Minimum Wage Act that you have to meet if you pay your employees a minimum wage. In respect of foreign nationals, exactly what I said earlier, and I repeat myself, you need to show that they are lawfully in the country by way of a visa, they have the correct work permit, you have your IDs, they have the employment contracts. So the mistakes that many businesses make is that they don't really ask for these documents, wrongly or rightly. And perhaps another mistake that they make is even if they ask for these documentation, they don't really keep a record of things. And what that I mean is that they don't keep a record of when these visas expire, when these permits expire. And so they probably need to have more of a robust system of timekeeping, not timekeeping per se, but record keeping. So it's everything they would need to do in the past in a more robust fashion going forward.
Okay, so what are some of the penalties that businesses could face if they are found to be employing foreign nationals unlawfully or failing to meet the new compliance requirements?
So, penalties, unfortunately, they apply to all businesses now. They exist. But the point I really would just like to get across is that these penalties or fines never existed. Sorry, they existed prior to all of the sort of panic that we have at the moment. And so, the Department of Labour officials, prior to everything now, and going forward, will still do the same thing. They will issue a compliance order. In that compliance order, they will tell you that you haven't complied with a certain section in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. They will tell you haven't complied with the National Minimum Wage Act. In this case, they might just tell you haven't complied with certain sections of the Employment Services Amendment Bill or the Employment Services Act. And so the fines, they could range anything from 100,000 Rand, like you said, up to 1 million Rand if it's a third, fourth offence. But monetary things can be paid. You can pay that and you sort of move along. But there are criminal consequences sometimes. You can be arrested, your staff could be arrested. Contracts might be voided if you do work for the state, for the government. You might lose a bid, you might lose a tender, might have reputational harm, that sort of thing. So there's more than just the financial risk that you have to deal with. It's also the reputation, your business, peace of mind, your staff. So those are the concerns that business owners must have in mind.
So if an employer now discovers that the employee's visa or work permit has expired, what immediate steps should they be taken to remain compliant with the law?
Okay, so this is a bit of a difficult one because, well, not difficult. It's a procedural sort of path that the employee has to charter. And it probably deals with sort of terminating the employment relationship. Because whilst that foreign national might not be lawfully in the country, the Labour Relations Act and the protections under the Labour Relations Act does apply to them because they so happen to be an employee as defined in those different pieces of legislation.
So you can't just fire somebody,
Well,
right?
you can't just fire them because that's unfair now. Now, you sound like you have enough experience about unfair dismissals and going to the CCMA and different bargaining councils. So the idea is to really first look at whether this person has applied to extend their visa or their work permit and then work from there. Alternatively, if this person is outright illegally in the country, you probably need to take steps to terminate that employment relationship, because if you don't sever that relationship, you could be the back end of like exactly what we spoke about now: a fine, a penalty, reputational harm, might be arrested for things like that. So again, I don't want to, each case is different, but I want to give the carte blanche or the blanket sort of approach to things. But the idea is that you probably might want to look at somehow terminating that employment relationship. Without going into too much detail, you have a no fault dismissal, and a retrenchment, which is another way to terminate relationships, and the other way is an incapacity sort of dismissal. So there's three ways an employment relationship can come to an end, and you probably have to go down the route of an incapacity sort of thing, where the employee is no longer in the position to be employed by you.
But would the retrenchments would come the you have to pay if the person's been employed by you, have to pay 1 week's wages for every year worked and things like that. So if it's to be done properly and not fall foul of the labor laws, then you have to do that as well. So otherwise you'd be falling foul of two laws. One is employing a foreigner, and secondly, not dismissing the person properly.
Sure. So maybe then the way again, case by case basis, don't quote me on it, but perhaps then the answer there is not to go down the retrenchment route. Perhaps the answer then is to go down the incapacity route. The employment contract would probably say that the employer reserves the right to terminate your employment for any serious misconduct, and you could make out the case potentially that you being illegally in the country is a serious misconduct, or you aren't in a position to render your services to the company because you are unlawfully within the country. So there are ways you have to go about it. But there's not necessarily you must go down retrenchment and pay them 2 weeks severance, 2 weeks compensation for each completed year of service. So case by case basis, but I think often employees will have to be understanding nowadays, because the pressure is not coming from the employer any longer. The pressure is coming from different lobby groups. I mean, there's Operation Tutula, there's March and March. I think that's another sort of movement that's sort of snowball in the last year or so. Those political parties sort of pushing their own agendas at the moment. So the as much as employers often see this big bad sort of overarching figure that sort of takes advantage or exploits the employees, which is probably what the part of the reforms are trying to balance out. At the same time, employees also need to be mindful that the obligation is also on them to sort of come to the party now. You can't come into the country lawfully and then let your documents expire perhaps and place your employer in the difficult position where they just now still dealing with the potential consequences because of your failings and shortcomings.
Okay, let's just talk about a situation where some companies at the moment are panicking because they do have staff that are properly registered, regulated, got all the papers, whatever, but sometimes everybody gets painted with the same brush. Now, when you have a vigilante group that's marching and stands outside your premises, and they're not thinking rationally. So whether the person is employed properly or not employed, they're going to threaten to burn the place down or harm the staff or something like that, simply because a foreigner is treated as a foreigner, whether they're registered, not registered, whether they are legally, illegally. So now companies are in a situation where they're having to kind of get rid of all foreigners, whether they're registered properly or not, because they're just panicking and they don't want the trouble, so to speak. Now, that's unfair on those that are here that are registered properly, but you don't also blame the companies because they don't need the trouble of 1,000 people standing outside their door. And we had a situation, I think, the other day at China Mall, also in Sikau Lake, where there were a good few thousand people standing outside because I think word got around that employment opportunities were there, and they say, hey, employ us first before you employ the foreigners. Okay, fine. But those people in the China Mall that were employing foreigners legally registered, obviously they're going to tell the employees, don't come to work for these few days, or you know what, I'm sorry, I can't employ you anymore, I don't need this problem. And the poor foreigners have done nothing to deserve this. So,
I mean, therein lies the ethical conundrum, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've spoken to so many people in the last couple of weeks, and they all say the similar thing. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I get the sentiment. But employees are scared. Employees who are lawfully in the country are scared. Employers are worried, not only for their safety, not only for the employee's safety, but their overall business. And so it's a difficult space.
I talk about business. Let's talk about retail.
Yeah.
A lot of stores in the Durban CBD, for example, are owned by foreigners, right? Whether they're from Somalia or Ethiopia or wherever. But these are entrepreneurs. They've opened businesses. They've stocked up. They've invested a lot of money. They rented the premises. They're paying their rentals on time. And now, for the last few weeks, because of these marches and things, they've had to on many occasions, close their doors for days on end.
Yeah.
And when they are being confronted, they're not being asked as to, have you got a proper work permit? It's a question of, You got a South African ID or you don't have a South African ID, right? That's all they're interested in.
Yeah.
Now, again, unfairly I'm saying, but that is the situation, right? So now take a case of that foreigner who's invested a lot in this country, is done well here. They now have to leave. South African landlords are going to be faced with a situation of empty premises because these people pay good rentals. They're not going to be able to pay those rentals and they're going to leave. There's going to be shortage of goods as well because these people sell goods at good prices and that's not going to be available. So the consumer is going to have to pay higher prices as well, right? So the ripple effect of all of this, maybe as there may be a third force that's behind this whole thing, but generally looking at it, it's not good for us.
So, look, the picture that you painted is definitely not good for us. But that's not what. That's not the intention is. The intention is not to drive out businesses contributing to the economy or to their smaller community and then to the greater CBD like you referred to. Now, the reality is that it might play out that way. There might be, certain instances where businesses and foreign nationals who have thriving businesses who are gainfully employing other people, might be South Africans that they're employing. There we go, another consequence. But the idea and the purpose of the legislation, the intention behind it, or the reforms, are not to do that, not to close down and shut down legitimate businesses and legitimate enterprises. Now, I hear you, and the lawyer in me is just listening to you and thinking, like, well, how do we go about stopping that? How do you prevent something like this? And there's recourse available to these businesses and to these companies. Unfortunately, it's, if you are a client, you'd come to me and you tell me these problems, and I'd say to you, look, you don't have many options. One of the options you would have, and again, I'm not touting myself, I'm just saying, looking for the solution as we talk. The solution would be to probably interdict these groups, interdict the head of that sort of, I don't know, I just want to call them the group or the body that comes and disturbs your sort of operations at your business. You interdict them. Once you interdict them, it becomes an order of court that they stay away from your business. They don't intimidate your staff. They don't harass your staff members. They don't come and intimidate you. And then if they do that, then it becomes a criminal offence to breach that order. So again, but you would say to me, but I'm just running a business. I don't have time for this here. I don't have the energy for it. I must spend more resources to solve problems that shouldn't really exist. And it's sad though, because the consequences that you speak about are not directly related, or the intended consequences of the reforms. The reforms are really just to balance the economic and socio-economic objectives of the country and the government, to uplift local South Africans and prioritizing them for certain jobs, but then also creating the space for skilled, smart and individual foreign nationals who would come in and plug in the gaps that we have, because we don't have everything. No country has everything. So the idea is the foreign nationals come in and fill the gaps in certain positions in the country as a whole. So the consequences you speak about, they might materialize. They might happen and they might damage our businesses.
Yeah, we got a few minutes. I don't think we're going to solve all the problems here tonight, but we do have serious problems. I mean, we're not even taking it down to domestic level.
Yeah.
I mean, look at a lot of our masjids, for example, our madrasas. They employ a lot of foreigners, whether as muazzins or in other positions, sometimes as apas, etc. And these people are knowledgeable people. They perform important roles in our society as Muslims as well. Yeah. How many of them are legal and how many are illegal? That's the other thing, right? Cool. Then even look at domestic level. You look at the houses. People employ a lot of Zimbabweans, for example, because they work diligently at the homes, whether they work as gardeners or as maids or whatever. Another whole scenario that opens up. So, interesting times. I mean, when we look at what's happening around us. And then there's the other viewpoint as well as to why are there so many people in Sherwood. Some of them or a lot of them have been harassed by the locals and have had their TV stolen and their phone stolen and their possessions stolen, so they were forced to congregate there at Sherwood. But there's the other feeling that there's some opportunists, they want a free ride home, so the buses will be provided, and what will normally be a 2,500-3,000 rand journey there'll be opportunity for them to go home, visit their families. 2 months time they'll come back. Who knows? I mean, there's different ways of thinking as well. So you're gonna kind of provide buses for the 10,000 there. Our community has been asked to also fund some of these buses and things. It's a mammoth task. I think each bus is over 100,000 rand to take them there. And then 10 days later, you're going to get another 10,000 people. How are you going to police that now?
Well, look, again, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think... Well, look, maybe I'm being optimistic about it. I don't imagine people are leaving because if they're lawfully in the country. I think those who are illegally in the country, I think they have genuine concerns and fears. Being arrested and deported out the country is, that's a stressful situation in and of itself. People who are lawfully in the country, I don't imagine that they genuinely believe that just jumping on this bus now, leaving for a couple of months, then coming back 2 or 3 months later would be feasible for them. Purely because
there's sort of let things cool down and then we'll come down.
Well, perhaps, but there's risk attached to that. I mean, again, I don't want to take too much of our time now, but I mean, if you go for namaz nowadays, I mean, the masjid that I go to, you can see foreign nationals in the masjid, and they make up a large number of the musallis in our masjid.
Sure.
I went for namaz at Sherwood, the masjid at Sherwood Grounds, Masjid Salihin, and it was packed, obviously, right? Because everyone is in their tents. Went to another masjid down the road, which is often very, very busy. I mean, was probably half the number of musallis in the masjid. So, there is the effect, but whether people go and come back, time will tell. Really, time will tell.
Okay. Thanks for being with us tonight, Anwar, and inshallah, we hopefully will talk on more positive grounds sometime in the future. Inshallah, this all resolves in a nice way for everybody involved. For the locals, for the foreigners, and even us. I mean, if they're talking about foreigners and they're going to start targeting Bangladeshis and Pakistanis, we as South Africans can be painted with the same brush, so to speak, because I know what Indian is an Indian at the end of the day, so to kind of thinking. So it's maybe a little bit far-fetched at the moment, but something that has to be at the back of the mind.
It's a concern, but it's not the purpose. The purpose is not to discriminate against someone purely because of what they look like or where they come from. The idea is just to regulate the workplace and the workforce to ensure that we're doing the most. It's all linked to the economic growth of the country.
That's right.
The idea is for South Africa to be in a position where there's constant and steady economic growth, and that can't happen in cases where the workforce itself is not working. It can't be 40% or 50% unemployment.
Sure.
So it's all linked to that. There's a greater play here. So again, it's just a long-term thing, and we'll have to see how it works and how it pans out.
I'm just tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
If all the foreigners have to leave, there won't be any checkers 60-60 delivering food to our doors. So anyway,
we'll see.
On that note, Jazakallah once again, and inshallah this all resolves in a very nice way for everybody concerned, and we find peace and security in our country. We still have a lot going that's positive for us, so let's keep our heads up high. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Business Matters. The title suggests many things. The important issue is the world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental, and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
Teaching you something new every day. Radio Al Ansar.
This Rabiul Awal, answer the call of your heart from only 25,000 Rand. Join us for a spiritually uplifting time honoring the birth of our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Packages ex-Johannesburg, 19th of August to 1st of September 2026 on the world's #1 airline, Qatar Airways. 6 nights in Medina, 6 nights in Makkah, 4-star hotels, transfers, visas and full guidance by the Shore Mirage travel team. Book now. Contact us on 031 2084 222 or WhatsApp on 0786 004972. Shore Mirage Travel, your trusted Umrah partner.
At Absa Islamic Banking, we get that the first lessons about money are never just about money.
2, 3, 400.
And what do we do with it?
We save some and we give some.
That's my boy. They're about responsibility, generosity, principles, and banking that honors your values. Get an Islamic youth account for your children, plus discounted banking for your spouse with Ultimate Islamic Banking. Apply online. Your story matters. ABSA. T's and C's apply. ABSA is an authorized financial services and credit provider.
There are over 200 million orphans globally. We can't help all of them, but what if we each helped just one?